admission for the city of Denison underway. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and confirm we do have a quorum here so we can move forward. The next item will be the public comment section. At this time, anyone's welcome to comment on any items here today. As far as some of these items are public hearings, and so at that point, you're welcome to speak on that particular item, obviously, or you can talk here right now. We will be limiting comments to 3 minutes today, so please make your statements as succinct as possible, so that we can get to everyone here today. And with that being said, was there anyone that would like to speak at this time? And please also be reminded, when you do, if you do choose to speak today, when you approach, please state your name and address for the record for us. Thank you. All right, then we'll close that public comment section and move on to the consent agenda, which is just the meeting minutes from the July 12th meeting. Are there any comments, corrections? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is approved. All right, next we will move into items for individual consideration. Item 4A.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Receive a report, hold a discussion, conduct a public hearing, and make a recommendation on a request to abandon a portion of Ford Street located east of Fannin Avenue and adjacent to lots 4 through 11 and parts of lots 3 and 12, Block 9 of the Fairmount Edition, case number 2022-069 ROW. This is a item that was tabled at the last Planning and Zoning meeting on July 12th. The applicant is requesting an abandonment of approximately 0.34 acres of Ford Street in order to create an additional lot in his, or for that portion of the right-of-way to become a portion of his lot for property that is south of that, located on Fannin Avenue. After the meeting, it was determined that the applicant did not submit an appropriate petition for abandonment to include all of the abutting property owners' names and addresses, and this is required per section 2181 through 2185 of the City of Denison Code of Ordinances. And for this reason, staff is recommending denial of that request. I'm present for any questions that you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Will this come back to us if those are all met?
So the applicant would need to submit a new petition for right-of-way abandonment with the requirements that are called out in the ordinance. And then, yes, at that point, if that is a complete application, we would bring it forward before y'all.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawley, I have a question.
Morning.
Do you want the information?
State your name and address for the record.
Josh Hawley, 3348 West Stafford Drive, Denison, Texas 75020.
Question. Do I understand correctly that if you're successful with the abandonment, that in fact you would take only half of the road?
That is correct.
And then the remaining half would be sufficient for access to those residential lots, or no?
That would be, you'd be correct in saying that, or they would not have access to those lots. And I guess one question I had was, I guess I never heard that not all the neighbors had been, I guess, notified. Is that correct?
That's what I get. Well, I think what it says is that the petition is supposed to have supposed to have the owner's names and addresses, any abutting property owners. I guess has that been communicated to him yet, or is this the first?
So it's called out in the ordinance that in order to request right-of-way abandonment, and Mary can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that you are petitioning that, and then your neighbors have the right to the other half of that, and they must either join in on the petition or provide letters, or you provide letters as to why they are not joining in on the petition. We can't just abandon half of the road. Is that incorrect?
Okay.
Can I ask you, so it's not possible to abandon only half of the road?
If your question is to, will there be access further down the road, should there need to be, there will not be sufficient access to
For
those
those
properties.
residential lots?
That's correct.
Thank you, that's my question.
I guess one thing, the north neighbor, I felt like he was notified because he was here at the last meeting. And after that, I don't believe he is here, unless I'm incorrect, because we had spoke after that meeting 2 weeks ago, and I felt like he was on board. On that property, if you have that up, the east neighbor and the northeast neighbor did give a, what do you call it, approval, consent, that he'd be good with the abandonment. The north neighbor that was here 2 weeks ago, we spoke. He also said that it would never make sense for the city to build a road over the creek because of the expense. None of the other neighbors would go in on the expense of the road. He'd be the only one. And so he said he would never build a road over that creek because you'd have to put a bridge in. So then his thought was put a cul-de-sac in. The right-of-way for that road is not large enough to put a cul-de-sac in. So therefore, he'd have to build the road midway to his midsection of his property, pop in a cul-de-sac on his property. At that point, he realized that it would never be feasible for him to build that road to get lots in, because he'd have to use his property for that cul-de-sac. And so at this point, I had told him that then essentially he could get the abandonment of his side of the road and have additional, get a lot configuration off of Fannin. And that's going to be, the most economically feasible way forward on this deal going forward. So I don't know what to do exactly from here, but it will never make sense to put a road through there, and none of the neighbors besides himself would put a road in. With him not being here today, in my conversation, I believe he's not interested in putting in a road.
That's totally fine. So if you can go back to all of those individuals and make sure that you have that in writing from them. I can't verify something that was a discussion in the hallway after the meeting. So I will have to have something in writing for those petitions saying that everyone is okay at this point in time, and then we can move forward just as we have.
I guess I just wish I'd been told that 2 weeks ago, and I could have easily gotten that from him.
I understand that.
Yeah.
However, I didn't know about the conversation that you had with him either, so that line of communication has to be open. And from our observations within the meeting, he was opposed at that point in time.
Yeah.
So our recommendation would be to deny it. You follow the process within the ordinance of having those petitions or agreeances from the property owners, all of the ones that you just listed, and we can bring this back.
I believe there's just one. Yeah. And so essentially the city's, or the P&Z is not allowed to approve?
Correct.
Okay.
They could approve on the condition that that is done, but that is up to the commission at this point in time. If you would like to make a recommendation based upon within a certain time frame, that is up to the commission. So you can take that at this point.
I would want to have certainty that there's only one property owner north of that in 149-425.
On
There's two.
There are additional lots, there are more than one lot platted there, correct? Like, what is it?
on the map here, do you see the parcel just north?
Yes.
That is the only parcel. The other parcel on the far northeast, I have that approval.
That's a property owner we heard from last time.
Do what
The
now?
one just directly north is the one that says on the 149-425. That's the one that was here last time. The other one is, he submitted an approval, but,
And there's only one property owner for the length of the other.
Yes.
can you confirm, so the ordinance requires them to consent, or the ordinance just requires them to be named as adjacent property owners?
I will defer to Diane at this point in time. She has it pulled up.
It says that, according to the ordinance, that they are to join in on the petition or provide letters, or Mr. Hawley is to provide letters stating as to why they are not joining in on the petition. And I think the problem is with the last one, while you had approval from the far east property owner, if I'm correct, didn't have anything in writing from the one that spoke at the last meeting. And therefore, that abandonment petition is not in, it doesn't follow the ordinance.
And I did call the city and left messages, but I never got a call back. So I just wish we could have handled this, before now.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think the communication part of it probably should have been a little bit better since this came before a couple weeks ago. To me, it makes sense, yes, for the reasons that Mr. Hawley detailed here, there's never gonna be an extension of Fork Street there, so as far as the abandonment makes sense. And when you do abandon, half goes to one side, half goes to the other side. So the guy to the north would have the option of purchasing his half from the city, just like I guess Mr. Hawley is proposing to do here. I would be in favor of conditionally approving it to, so that we don't delay this further. Because, like I said, I think, if he had known this 2 weeks ago, could have had it all set up, and now he's going to miss the next council meeting, which would not be now until September, correct? If it doesn't go on the August meeting.
So right now, it's slated to go for August 1st. There is another council meeting in August. Isn't there?
Oh, there is, okay. That's my 2 cents.
So if he could get this in writing, then it could go to August 15th.
August 1st.
August 1st.
It is my understanding that if he can complete the petition with the required agreements from the other property owners, it can continue to go on August 1st, which is Monday.
I mean, I guess at that point, the council could conditionally approve it as well. I mean, that would be up to them as well. Obviously, we are
The
just a
council-
recommending body, so this is gonna be our recommendation to council. They can take it, they can expand on it, like I said, this is just what our recommendation would be to council. They will be the ones to formally decide, yes, does this get, do you get additional time? Is it conditionally approved? What the status is there. My recommendation would be to conditionally approve it, to keep it moving. If that's something that you feel you would be able to get accomplished.
100%.
I would approve that condition, assuming, Mr. Hawley, that you could have the paperwork in place when you came to the council for approval, so that we don't yet again
Right.
forestall it. That's good, right?
Any other questions of Mr. Hawley at this point? you have anything further to add?
No.
Okay. I don't believe I have anyone else here that's filled out a comment card on this item. Any other discussion, comments among the commission members? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion on this item.
I'll entertain a motion under a conditional, I'm not sure how to word this, that Mr. Holly gets his approval in writing, or his, for the abandonment of that property. And so, the portion of Ford Street right of way located at Fannin Avenue.
On a certain time frame.
Before the next council meeting.
I'll second.
So I have a motion that, to conditionally approve this item, with the condition being that Mr. Hawley obtain those owners, the two other owners' approval prior to the council meeting, the August 1st, is that right? Yeah, August 1st council meeting, correct? Okay. All right. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, that motion is approved. All right. Next, we will move into the public hearing section. Again, if you wish to speak on these items, when you do approach, please state your name and address for the record for us. And also, we will be limiting comments to 3 minutes. All right. So, first item is item 5A.
Item 5A, receive a report, hold a discussion, conduct a public hearing, and make a recommendation on a request for a conditional use permit for an aggregate sales yard on approximately 11.87 acres located at 2827 Ray Drive in the LC Alexander Survey A-41 and the William R. Carruthers Survey A-213, Zone Light Industrial, case number 2022-050 CUP. This item was brought before this body for recommendation on June 14th, and then also was taken to council on June 21st for action, and action was taken on this item. However, after the case was approved by council, staff was made aware of a noticing error, and therefore staff corrected that noticing error, and this case has to be reconsidered by this body as well as council. So, just to refresh your memory, this is a request for a conditional use permit for an aggregate sales yard for property located in the Union Pacific Rail Yard just north of Ray Drive and east of US 75. This property is zone light industrial. This is a proposed site plan for that property. A couple of issues for consideration. This location does have a access from the rail yard to Highway 84, and while that is, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm trying to get my facts straight. Proximity to residential development. This property is located just north of Ray Drive, and everything south of Ray Drive is residential property. They are separated by a tree line and significant elevation differences. However, staff is proposing that the applicant maintain that tree line in order to maintain that natural buffer from the aggregate sales yard to the residential development that is to the south. There are traffic access and infrastructure improvements that are needed. The rail yard does have access, a driveway access from Ray Drive to the property, as well as access from Morton Street to the property. However, staff is recommending that the applicant utilize Juanita Drive to 84 solely, rather than trucking through residential development that is already in existence. The Juanita Drive in particular is a narrow and in poor condition street, and if the aggregate yard is approved, the applicant will enter into a development agreement in order to improve Juanita Drive for future access. Environmental considerations, dust, noise, and stormwater runoff are all issues that must be managed for this type of use. And the applicant plans to address these through use of water trucks, dust control agents, and noise reduction backup alarms. And the operation must acquire and maintain permits for stormwater management as well as other permits that are required by the Texas Commission on Environmental Control or Quality, which is TCEQ. Staff is still recommending approval of this use with the conditions as follows: acquisition and compliance with all required state and local permits, continuous abatement of dust and noise related to the aggregate yard operations, maintenance of the existing tree line and vegetation located north of Ray Drive, and all customer and employee traffic shall utilize Juanita Drive for access to and from the property. No access is allowed on Morton Street or Ray Drive, and an approval of a development agreement with the city for the improvements to Juanita Drive. I'm present for any questions that you may have, and so is the applicant.
Just to clarify on that, all traffic, it would go north, and there would be no traffic going south.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions of staff at this point? All right. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter? Again, if you'll state your names and addresses for the record for us.
Will do. Sean Foley and Kevin Stone. Our business address is 1503 LBJ Freeway, Dallas, Texas. Thank you for hearing us again today. As a brief introduction, we're from Marietta, and one of our core values is community. We take great pride in being active members in the community, both for employees' pride and of their employer, but also that communities are proud to have us operate in their communities as well. We operate 20 rail yards similar to this one that we're looking to open here in Denison in the state of Texas. An important distinction to make is that a rail yard is not a quarry or a sand and gravel pit, but a transload facility.
Did you say 20?
20.
20.
Yes, ma'am.
Are any of those contiguous to residential neighborhoods?
Yes, and in Houston, we actually have sites that are fairly close to residential neighborhoods.
Thank you.
The area we're proposing is zone light industrial, an existing rail facility and consistent with the use of the property. As staff mentioned, we will be exiting Juanita Drive and will not have truck traffic in the residential area, and we'll commit to physically blocking that off to make those access points off of Ray Drive not possible. As thus, we operate under strict guidelines associated with the Clean Air Act as well as state requirements enforced by the TCEQ. We will have the appropriate dust mitigation measures in place, as we do at our other rail facilities throughout the state. Operating hours, we plan to operate the rail yard typically from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week. But due to TxDOT demands with night work, that could shift to also overnight operations. This property is zone light industrial, an existing rail facility, and our proposed use is consistent with its zoning and current operations. So, thank you.
Any questions of the applicants?
I have several. Initially, we were told that the yard would operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, correct?
With that option, typically we'll operate during daytime hours, but depending on TxDOT demand or county demand with night operations for the physical construction of those projects, then we'll be open overnight.
Okay. We know that, or at least it's stated in the quiddity report, that the trains do not, in fact, offload at night because it's not safe. So there wouldn't be that portion of noise or dust generated in the night. It would only be sales.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Are there citizens who are going to speak? I don't want to reiterate, or would your preference be to hear from the citizens or for me to continue to ask my questions?
Either way, ma'am, I guess my preference would be to hear all the concerns and come up here again and address them.
That's what we did last time.
Yeah, say go ahead. If you have other questions, go ahead. That's all right.
There are several areas, and when we met before, I expressed my concerns about those. One is dust, And as I understand it, no visible dust emissions are allowed. That's per the environmental agency. So how do we keep that from happening? You say you're gonna water it down, and that in addition to water, there are chemicals that can be added to the water to increase the dust suppression.
Yeah, it'll suppress the dust.
And then you also said, Mr. Foley, that there were additional procedures other than the chemicals, or is it just other chemicals?
Well, we do the structural controls, which are gonna be the potential chemicals that we could use, and water. We are looking to have a water truck fully on-site. In addition to that is we have monitoring. So our guys are routinely out on the site and they're monitoring what's going on at the property. So if there are issues, then we can look to implement more practices.
Visually or with equipment?
Other,
Monitoring,
the monitoring or the mitigation of the dust?
the monitoring,
The monitoring is visual.
It's visual.
visual. Okay, apropos then to other sorts of monitoring, that would also not involve any sort of equipment, but only be visual, and it would be performed by your people?
Yes.
So no equipment to do the monitoring would be required?
No.
What about chemical emissions?
Chemical emissions?
There aren't any chemical emissions associated with our property.
Okay. Concerns about the traffic. We have the improvement to Juanita. Thank you for that. You're saying 100 trucks a day and for sales operations. And you're imagining at this point that that would take place in what one might call daylight hours, right?
Yes, yes.
And so we can assume then that those 100 trucks would come and go between 5 in the morning and 6 or 7 in the evening.
Right.
Yes. Not only are there neighbors nearby, but there are also proposal for, I think it's about 250 new homes. And you all are talking about expanding by 10 more acres for concrete batching in the future. Those 10 acres being to the east, which then becomes contiguous to even more residential uses.
Mm-hmm.
That's a concern for me. And we have obviously the property value issues about that, future use and development. There are portions of these issues for which, to my belief, the city has no standards for compliance. For instance, I've looked at our noise compliance ordinances, and it does not address this sort of nuisance noise. Rather, it's loud parties, music, loud vehicles, you know, but no industrial noise monitoring. So what are the industry standards? What do other communities ask of you as far as a maximum decibel level for community noise ordinance standards? Because that's something that we need to consider as a community.
I'm not aware of a maximum decibel that's been requested, but generally a complaint is related to backup alarms, and that's why our equipment we're looking to have on site, our mobile equipment, it's all going to have the white noise alarms. And just from our experience, the white noise alarms, I mean, the sound dissipates generally enough before it reaches property lines that it's within the city ordinances that we operate.
McKinney's, there are 65 decibels in the day and 58 at night. Accurate point of information. How do those backup noise monitors work? I mean, we know the egregious beep, beep, beep ones. So how do these muffle sound? I mean,
I think the best way to describe it is, like if you're back with the personal vehicles, if you're backing up with the cameras and as you get closer to item behind you, it gets louder and louder. So the same way, except that's outside. So if you're within a close distance of striking something or someone outside,
some kind of alarm goes off.
it gets louder and louder for safety reasons.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But if there's nothing behind them, then it's.
Okay. In my investigation, the state monitors, the state does no monitoring. The state looks at enforcement and compliance compliance. But they don't do anything that relates to noise. It's only chemicals, basically, and the sort of things that might pollute the environment. So once again, that's why I think we, as a community, need to have some community standards about noise, since that is not going to be dealt with by our state environmental regulatory agency. So I have one more question. Are there no other sites available that would not be right up against not only a current but a future residential use? Because when I look at the map, that train track, there's a whole lot of stuff north of it as well that's vacant. Has that been investigated? Are those Union Pacific properties as well?
I'm not familiar with all the ownership out there, but we selected this property because it was zoned light industrial. It's an existing rail facility, and we feel we're consistent use with that property.
50-foot light poles. It's pretty high. And we're told, I'm assuming they're about the same size as car lots have, right? And we're told that you can direct them so the light does not go beyond.
Yeah, yes.
The quiddity report says that you'll retain as many trees as you can, but it doesn't say all of them. And I understand that's just sort of nitpicking, but I'm wondering if the conditional use permit might say you need to maintain all of them.
So the trees we're proposing to take down are next to the track itself, not the ones
Not on
bordering.
the residential
Yeah,
side.
our
Thank
intent, and that can be in the permit. I mean,
Thank you. So any monitoring that is done would only be done by you all, correct? The city has no facilities or plans to monitor industrial uses, my understanding.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there might be some stormwater requirements from our Public Works Department, but I'm not aware of what that would
Okay.
look like.
I didn't find it. So your people would monitor, and then you would mitigate anything that might not be within tolerable standards for your neighbors.
yeah, well, the TCEQ and
Yes.
Kevin's actually better.
I was going to say the TCQ, I mean, they routinely come out and inspect our facilities, so they'll also be coming out to our sites. I mean, it's anytime, if we do have an issue at our site, so I mean, obviously we do our best that we can. If we do have an issue, obviously our neighbors are going to complain, they reach out to TCQ, TCQ comes to our property, so, I mean, they also will be coming to inspect our site. So our goal is to have zero emissions, zero issues.
Thank you. So I have concerns about monitoring compliance and enforcement. And I have concerns about the city's responsibility to all of us in that regard.
Well, I do believe this is for a conditional use permit. So, I mean, if we are having issues related to dust emissions or something like that, I think, you know, our operation, it's conditional based upon us being in compliance with the permit.
Let me ask you a similar question from a different angle. It seems like with aggregate and with any that's connected to the earth, they're organic products, they're natural, they don't have petroleum or anything like that. So the visual, I would think, would be obvious if the dust abatement is not working. So any neighbor who saw a dust cloud, or worst case scenario, that it was visually obvious that the dust abatement was not working, they could directly contact TCEQ and consider that a violation. Is that correct?
Yes, TCQ, I think their practice is, once they receive a complaint, they have 30 days to come out. But for our facilities, just with the exposure that we have, it's, you know, pretty close to 2 weeks, a week. They come out to our sites after a complaint is
So
submitted.
can you talk a little bit about a similar operation that you have, and whether there's been any complaints, and what is the situation with that?
So the vast majority of our sites, so up here in North Texas, what is the exact number? I think we have 6 or 7 up here in North Texas. Some of which, our neighbors, I believe, have visibility to our site. I mean, TCQ comes out, we haven't received any violations in the last 5 years, and it's rare for us to receive complaints. And I think it's a testament to our employees' commitment. So when we see an issue, obviously we don't want TCQ coming out and us getting violations. It's a very big deal on our side. So again, we do everything we can.
This is more of a request. I know you guys are interested in Denison's history. In phase 2, I imagine you're full aware of what that used to be. It's the old roundhouse from the railroad. It would be wonderful, and the historians of our area would love it if you would incorporate that somehow in your plan. I don't know what I'll leave that plan to you.
All right, yeah, well, certainly.
Thank you. One other thing is little bit of a discrepancy. When you all talk about 160 feet from public road, we've had some presentation before that sounded, they used a figure of about half that, about 90 feet from their door. So I don't know.
What's the distance being measured?
It sounds like their house is that far from where you would be operating. Is that possible?
I don't think so, but I'd have to go measure
So
it.
you
That seems
can't
awful
think
close, because
of
the width of a road is
any-
typically 30
yeah.
feet wide.
Okay.
You'd think that
Thank-
the house would be 30 feet, front door of the house would be 30 feet from the road, and
And also considering the buffer distance, the untouched vegetative strip that we're leaving in, that's at least 160 feet. So.
What would the procedure be for revoking a conditional use permit?
If the applicant was not in compliance with the conditions that are called out in the conditional use permit, then I imagine that we would, forgive me, I've never revoked a CUP before.
That's my next question. Have you ever done
I'm not saying one hasn't been done, I personally have not, but I imagine that we would vet that with staff. And then I'm honestly not sure what that would look like from a staff's perspective, but we would work to getting it revoked, whether it's through legal or from the administration. Mary?
It would definitely be a legal process, so we would have to go through proper noticing and speak with the legal team first before addressing any issues. I do just want to remind everyone that the conditional use permit, this was approved, so due to improper noticing, that's the intention behind this meeting at this point in time, is to hear from any residents who did not have the opportunity to address the commission. So this will be going before council on the 1st as well. So just keep that in mind. We've already moved through this process, and we just want to give residents the opportunity to address the commission and the applicant if they have questions that have not already been or issues or concerns that have not yet been addressed, to do that in this forum at this time.
Any other questions at this point for the applicants?
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Anyone else like to speak on this request?
Could you open the public hearing, please?
Oh, yes. All right. At this point, I'll open up the public hearing portion on this item.
My name is Angie Williams. I live 2810 Ray Drive in Denison. I first want to thank you ladies for being concerned about the environment of the dust and particles. I appreciate you with your thoughts, more than you know. My concern is with Mock Avenue. The population there are people that have health problems anyway. And Mock Avenue is not very far. And I know you're saying 200 feet or yards or whatever it is, but what's the difference in 250? when you've got dust particles blowing from the north or southeast or whatever, those people are right there. And these dust particles are so small. And I want to say I've tried to do a little bit of investigating about aggregate plants and stuff like that. And there are certain stones that cause a different kind of reaction to the body. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's what your countertops are made out of.
Grant?
Yeah, that can be very toxic to the lungs. And if y'all have not looked up some of this, I do ask that you please do that. We live in Denison, and I've been there for 50 years. I have asthma. There's people in my neighborhood wearing oxygen from John Mansfield. You know, we've already had John Mansfield do things to our people in Denison, and most of them are already dead. And I just ask that you consider the health of our citizens. And this is a company coming in when we've already been here. It's our home. Where are we going to go? Do we need to move because we have a dust particles coming in, and they're going to be dust? No, they can't contain it all. What happens if there's a spill of limestone? You know, I've read up on some of these other things, and what about the fire department? Are they going to be taught how to manage when an emergency happens? And that is maybe chemicals of the stones mixed together and a combustion happens. Those kind of things. There's just more than just rock being out there and them dumping it here and carrying it off there in a truck. It's going to have dust that's in our atmosphere. There's nothing they can do about that. They can do a little watering, but what's already up there, and in my thoughts, is the thick humidity that we have here. If we don't have a breeze, it's just going to hang right there until you go out to get in your car, and then you're going to breathe it. That's all I have to say. But thank you very much, ladies, for your input.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this request?
Good morning, and forgive me, I probably will touch base with what a couple of you, both of you ladies did say. I will be expanding on some of it as well.
Ms. Gardner, would you state your name and
I'm so
address for the record
sorry.
for us? There you
Yes, I'm Peggy Gardner. I live at 2705 West Washington Street in Denison.
go. Okay. Would you move, you're a little quiet there, maybe a little closer to the microphone. There
Okay.
you go. It wasn't picking you up very good.
All right.
There you go.
And Ms. York, would you mind if I used that color slide that shows the delineation of where Martin Marietta will be? The one with the green trees and stuff.
This one?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I believe there is the access road that goes presently into the proposed Martin Marietta area is where that roundhouse used to be. There is already a gravel road that goes through there that touches Juanita Drive. That's where, my understanding, that's where the trucks will be entering. I'll start with that since we have that screen up. I actually went this past Friday to the Martindale Marietta operation in Salina, Texas, and I was kindly given a fact-finding tour. I learned that the dump trucks weigh 84,000 pounds when full. They have 18 wheels, diesel engine, and air brakes. They're loud even while they're slowly rolling forward. The drive from that entrance at Juanita Drive to the proposed Martin Marietta yard at Ray Drive is about a half a mile. Each dump truck will need to make that drive twice, going in and going out of the facility. Martin Marietta said they will have about 100 trucks per day taking that route. What do they do? What does Martin Marietta do to alleviate that kind of noise of the dump trucks moving down a gravel road for that kind of distance. And then you guys have touched on the fact that you won't be running the trucks at night. So that will shorten or provide some respite from the noise. During my visit last Friday at the Salina plant, Salina does have a rail access and a ready-mix tower. I had a water truck was in use to dampen the sand to reduce dust. It was pointed out to me that when the weather is as hot as it is, the water evaporates so quickly, it's not very effective at keeping the dust down. At the Salina location, the city of Salina provides the water used to fill the water trucks needed to reduce the dust. A water truck holds 4,000 gallons. Oh, already? Okay, thank you. Thanks for listening.
You want to finish? You can finish your thought there, but. Yeah, go.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Oh, finish my thought? Thank you
Yeah,
very
go ahead.
much. Okay. So, will the city of Denison supply water to Martin Marietta? If so, when we have extreme weather like now, will Martin Marietta ration its water along with the rest of Denison? Will the city of Denison's water supply realistically ensure a water supply adequate to meet the needs of Martin and Marietta in addition to all the new homes being built? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Foley, are there contingency plans if there's a drought? I mean, I think that's a relevant question. If I can't water my yard, but you can dampen your dust.
Right. That's when we use dust suppressant agents more.
In lieu of water. It also occurs to me that the only noise that's being made is not going to be just backing up.
You'll have the vehicle engines, the truck engines, I think.
And when the materials are loaded into the truck, surely that's pretty noisy as well. I'm assuming, though, that the neighbors are less concerned with the noise if it's occurring in the day.
I don't know if I live very close to it, but with the truck, I don't live along that truck line. I live right behind the plant, about a quarter mile from it. So the new homes that are being built will also be right along that road where the trucks will be going in and out. And may I have permission to say one more very brief sentence?
Yeah, just make it real brief, please.
Thank you.
The property of Mock Avenue is just south of what this picture shows. And we've got, how many people living there that already have health problems?
This is brief, I promise. At last, please appreciate that the entrance to Martindale Marietta will sit just across Juanita Drive from the entrance of our Magnolia Cemetery. Magnolia Cemetery will be ruined as a meaningful place of respect, peace, and sanctuary.
I've got one question. Will y'all be upgrading the Hall Road from Juanita up to the yard? So it will be hard surface, and right now it's just a gravel road that, when the wind blows, it stirs up dust now, so it will actually be a better surface.
Well, we'll improve the road existing, in our current plans is not to put a hard surface.
Okay. But it will be maintained with water trucks and all to which is not currently, of course, there's not that much traffic on it, but
How many people do you imagine you will employ? How many local people will you employ? Three. We were also told that there would be a benefit of $100,000 in sales tax revenue over what time frame?
I think think that was
year?
per year is what was kind of the estimate that was.
Yeah, based on our current estimates, with all the projects going on in this area, with all the commercial work that we currently have visibility on,
That's a
per-
year.
yeah, that'd be per year, but with sales tax and projects, we don't
You
get to
can't
determine
right.
if it's a state project or, so the sales tax can fluctuate. But based off of what we see now,
That would be per year.
yeah, and then also we doing the improvements on Juanita, and then also continuous contribution to a maintenance fund.
Would anyone else like to speak on this item?
My name is Carlos Franson, Ray Drive, Denison. I own the acreage immediately south of the project site. I believe the application was previously approved in error due to some missing information that you guys need to make an informed decision and establish proper conditions. The staff report you have in front of you claims that the areas are recommended for commercial and residential uses in the future land use plan, which is in the comprehensive plan. The report does not mention that there is a revitalization overlay for that area and includes a variable noticeable call-out right on the actual proposed site for neighborhood commercial. If you turn to pages 60 and 61 of the comprehensive plan, you'll see that the land use plan and guide state that revitalization areas should redevelop into walkable neighborhood scale mixed use area, and neighborhood commercial gives examples of restaurants, retail, and entertainment. That's what is called for the future here in Denison. This is why it's important. Section 281110 of the zoning ordinance, which is the criteria for approval for a conditional use permit, states that the proposed use be consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. There are no documents before you that show how the applicant intends to be consistent with the revitalization overlay and future neighborhood commercial activities. Just a few more points about the application, which there are many. No traffic impact analysis was presented. This is a standard requirement in most other cities, and even mentioned as a possible requirement document in our own very ordinance. 100 rock trucks jumping out on Highway 84 while our children are traveling to and from school is a hazard. A traffic study is needed to see if additional controls or routes should be required. Highway 91 needs to be on this traffic study. To not require it should be considered negligent if something were to happen. No violation history from the current or past agencies was submitted by the applicant. We don't know if they have a history or how well they operate their places. No photometric survey was submitted. So even though they're going to put lights up, that's a standard requirement to show where the lights are going to shine and at what brightness. No state or other permit issuers' parameters were submitted. Previous approvals by this body and council gave approval what we call a blanket permit. No enforceable parameters, no airborne particulate limits, no decibel limits, no holiday work limits, no illumination limits, other than the minimum standards required by the state. Do we know what those values are? Can we enforce them? No. And those of us who have dealt with state enforcement agencies for over a decade know TCQ is not coming when you call them, especially on the 4th of July when you're having a barbecue and you get blown with dust. Chairman and commission members, this is a planning and zoning meeting. If council ignores the residents, ignores the ordinances, considers external factors in order to get their new street, then let the negligence be on them. But I believe this governing body does not have the necessary information to recommend approval or establish proper conditions to protect the residents and be consistent with the adopted ordinances and comprehensive plan. I would hope that the applicant immediately stands up and withdraws their incomplete application. If they don't, then I believe a motion to recommend disapproval of the application based on incomplete information, health and safety concerns, and the application being inconsistent with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan should be put forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this item?
I have one more question then. Did I understand correctly that really doesn't make any difference what we do today because the council already decided to provide conditional use permit? Because that's not what the agenda item says.
I'm sorry? No. The recommendation from this body last time was to approve with the conditional uses as established, and Ms. York shared with us earlier, and that's why it will go before council. That does not mean that you cannot make a different recommendation. It will still go before council on Monday, the 1st. And at that point in time, there's another public hearing. So that is the opportunity for citizens to come and present what they have shared today, again, in front of council. And then it'll be council's decision to bring it back to your body for further review.
Thank you for the clarification. So we could, in fact, add additional conditions before it goes back to council, correct?
Yes, you can add other conditions.
We are just recommending, council is the one, they can take our recommendation, they can do their own, they can, yes, what the,
But that was my question, actually.
all right, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm Clifford Johnson. I live at 3718 Fawn Meadow Trail. I live nowhere near where these folks are, but I've sat here and listened to what they've had to say, and I feel compelled to speak out. I have listened to this, and I see no value that this is going to add to the city of Denison or the citizens. There is all kinds of things that are going to take away from the value of life. There are 100 trucks a day. We've already got street problems. I can tell you I've replaced 3 windshields in 2 years, and they're not even here yet. So you've got that. They're talking about no dust. Who's going to police that? They are. What's the penalty? You got to call the EPA? How long does it take the EPA to get out here? We have no ordinances to support these people. We have folks here with serious health problems. I think you need to consider that more so than putting in an aggregate plant. And did you hear him say they wanted to expand to a concrete batch plant later? Do you know what that will do? You think they've got dust now. Wait until you get a concrete batch plant. I mean, you need to think about those things and these people, is my opinion. And that's basically why I'm here. I just believe in our city, and I think our city should be concerned about the citizens. I think when you consider bringing something in, does it add value? I haven't heard a thing that adds value to our city or the quality of life of our folks. So I ask you to please reconsider approving this. Thank you.
One clarification would be, obviously, any type of future plans would be by separate hearing, so this is only for the current use, but if there was a batch plan, anything else, that's not tied to this. That would have to go through approvals and so forth, just like this, but would not be, just because this is allowed doesn't mean that any type of other future use would be allowed. Just want to make that clarification. All right. Would anyone else like to speak on this item?
Go in a different vein, back to the $100,000. Very brief.
Very brief.
Very brief. Do I need to go up
Yeah.
there?
If you'll come up there just so we can hear you, okay?
Thank you. And as you stated that during the June 14 Planning and Zoning hearing pertaining to the Martin Marietta, it was mentioned that allowing Martin Marietta business at Ray Drive will bring Denison about $100,000 per year in sales tax. By today's standards, that's not a great deal of money. It is probable that $100,000 will be easily gleaned as a result of the recent Main Street improvements. That's the point. An increase in Denison's population will naturally result in an additional sales tax. Allowing Martin Marietta to open at Ray Drive could very well reverse any goodwill and improved reputation that Denison has worked so hard to foster.
one question, I guess, follow-up question there for the applicants. Would you like to expand any as far as on, the benefits that the city might see? Obviously, the sales tax would be part of it, but, any other benefits to the city that would come of this? Is there anything else?
We're active members of the community, as we've already committed, we're gonna enter a development agreement for Juanita Drive, the property to the north, contribute to a maintenance fund. Also, we're active members of the community, we're big sponsors of events in many of our communities, Salina, Cajun Fest, and Oktoberfest, so, we take proud, and we want the community to be proud to have us there, and, that's what we work for. Really, that's why Kevin's here, so.
Yeah, I mean, we operate in numerous cities throughout the state of Texas. In a lot of our larger cities and even smaller ones, we have tournaments, golf tournaments. We raise a tremendous amount of money for the local cities. Recently at Bridgeport, I think it was close to $120,000 we raised for the United Wedding for a charity shoot we did there. So we are a large company, but we operate very locally, and I think we do a great job of that.
I guess I would assume, I know there was somebody from the last meeting that was a contractor that spoke up as far as just helping with the availability of materials for these construction projects that are going on here within this area. But does that have effect on those as well?
Yes, so it'll be a limestone material brought in from Wise County. Over here, right now, all material into Denison's trucked either from Wise County or from southern Oklahoma down to Denison. So the material will be on site and available. And the number of trucks required to be used to pick it up here versus at one of those other locations is less, so you imagine the contractors would gain their efficiencies.
I would just like to add, just one of the questions that was asked was, or statements, was that there were going to be chemicals associated with our site or operation related to emissions, but there's no chemical manufacturing that goes on at our operation. We basically mine material, and again, as Sean said in the beginning, it's just stockpiled at this facility. So there's no alteration of the material that occurs.
We did receive some public notices for this item. One, two, three, four, five. We have five notices that were received that were opposing the request. Do I need to read those or pass them to the other commission members? Does it?
I would read them.
Okay, all right. First one, Stephen Waronke, I think W-A-R, I think that's, I can't see that. At 2015 Dove Lane, no one wants gravel trucks going in and out of Dove Lane. Gravel trucks are loud and wide and hard on the road due to their weight. Right now, there is not much traffic. Later, Dove Lane will be extended and much more traffic. Dove Lane is very narrow, not much room for two cars to pass each other, much less gravel trucks. Right now, we will be told what we want to hear. Later, things will change. They just need to get their foot in the door for now. And then Navardo and Andrea Johnson on West Washington just opposed the request. Jacqueline and Melvin Wafer at 2011 Dove Lane. We moved this area for the peace and quiet as well as a safe area for our grandchildren to play safely. Juanita Road is a mess already across the tracks, and trash is continually dumped in the area. Road is not maintained. This will only make it worse. Nathan Ellis, 1207 Park Drive. I would only like to request that a solid retaining wall be put up by Ray Drive to help with the noise and dust. We have an autistic son who is very sensitive to sound. The trains took him 2 years to get used to. And Jason Ratcliffe, Prime Star Homes LLC, 1230 Oak Drive, Denison. Opposed the request. I do not want an aggregate sales yard across the street from my house because of the noise, dust, and traffic damaging roads in our neighborhood. Noise and dust will make my property less desirable, and I'm not sure that the property taxes will not go down. The aggregate sales yard will have a negative effect on my property in the future. All right, that's the ones that were received by staff. All right.
There's gonna be a 2,000-gallon diesel storage tank. What's that fuel used for? The loaders, so that, and they probably make some noise as well, right? No, the loaders.
Yeah, that's the equipment with backup on top.
I thought those were the trucks that were picking up for sales,
No, the truck should come in and just pull through.
so they never have to back up.
I will not say we'll never have to back up, but
The way we're designing the plan, the traffic pattern is.
Always goes. And so the backup alarms, in fact, are on the equipment that you use to move the aggregate to the trucks. And that's what the diesel fuel is required for.
yes,
And those are front-end loaders, or?
yes.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this request? All right, then I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this item. Any further questions of staff or discussion among commission members? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for an aggregate sales yard if the motion is for approval and meeting the being subject to the acquisition and compliance with all required state and local permits, continuous abatement of dust and noise, maintenance of the existing tree line and vegetation. All customer and employee traffic shall utilize Juanita Drive for access, and approval of the development agreement with the city for improvements to Juanita Drive.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have one opposed. All right, the motion is approved. All right, again, that item will go to the August 1st council meeting. All right. Now we will move on to item 5B.
Item 5B, receive a report, hold a discussion, conduct a public hearing, and take action on a replat of lots 1R-A and 1R-B, Block 1 of the Gateway West Phase 2 Edition, case number 2022-079RP. This is an aerial view of that subject property. You have Highway 75 to the east, and that is Hayday just to the west of this property. And here's the proposed replat. The applicant is requesting approval of this replat in order to create an additional lot and to add an entrance from the service road from US 75. Staff recommends approval of this request, and I'm present for any questions, and I believe the applicant is as well.
Just one on the adding access, can you tell me a little bit how that decision was made? They've kind of avoided lots of access, so most traffic has to go down to the corner and then into that whole big development.
I believe the applicant can add to this, but I know that there's only one access to that development
Right.
off of the service road currently, and this would probably provide better access to the commercial
Correct.
properties that are there currently, but I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Looks like
Good morning.
we have-
I'm Tom Johnson, TPJ Properties. I guess nobody wanted to hear me speak. They cleared the room. So To answer your question, the access is exactly to improve what you said. It's to improve access to Hayday, the Hilton Garden Inn. We had to get approval for that particular location for that access from TxDOT. So there'll be that entrance and probably one more to the north. So this has just been in phases of our development, and as things continue to sell and develop out there, then this is the next phase to plat that remaining lot, add the new entrance coming in off of the highway service road, which would improve and take pressure off of the southern entrance. So that's basically what we're doing here. Do you have questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Johnson? No? All right. Would anyone else like to speak on this request? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing portion of this item. And any further discussion among commission members? No? Then I would entertain a motion on this item.
I move to approve the proposed replat.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we will move on to item 5C.
Item 5C, receive a report, hold a discussion, conduct a public hearing, and make a recommendation on a request for an approval of a conditional use permit for an auto dealer used for property located at 1900 South Austin Avenue, case number 2022-077 CUP. This is an aerial view of that subject property. You have Austin Avenue to the west, and then that is Burrell Street just to the north. And this property is zoned commercial, and it does fall within the Austin overlay district. And there is other commercial along Austin, and there is residential zoning behind this property. This is the proposed site plan. This property has been utilized as a used car dealership in the past. However, that use has lapsed, and therefore a new conditional use permit or a new approved conditional use permit must be possessed in order to operate this location as a used car dealership. It is currently already fenced off, and it does have crushed gravel on site. The applicant would like to utilize the crushed gravel. However, staff is recommending that all parking be located on an improved surface and paved with either asphalt or concrete, and all employee and visitor parking shall be striped. There is also a potential issue for open storage, and so staff is recommending that open storage may not exceed 5% of the total lot area, and all excess storage must be screened from all public streets. Those are both called out in our ordinances. I will also say that this property, with it being adjacent to residential zoning, they will have to screen that back portion from the residential properties that are located behind it. They are proposing hours of operation to be Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. With those additional conditions that I've already mentioned, staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit, and I'm present for any questions, and so is the applicant.
As far as the screening, what type of screening would be required for that, between that and the residential use?
Just a fence of some sort. It can be up to the applicant as long as they follow our ordinance, and it doesn't exceed 8 feet in height, and what other standards may be called out in our screening ordinance, but it can be a wooden privacy fence.
So that's what's called out in the ordinance, a wooden privacy fence. Metal is not permitted. If it's already been there, we will talk to the applicant about that and try to figure out what is the best course of action. However, the ordinance calls out that that's not permitted, metal fence.
Right, okay. That answered my question exactly. All right. Any further questions of staff?
Is the applicant here?
Yeah. The applicant would like to address any of the items?
Hello, my name's Shannon with Shannon Dane with Uptown Motors, 1900 South Austin. This is the property owner, Sam.
My name is Song So, also is an Uptown Motors owner.
I have one question. Do you have the current location in Sherman?
No.
No, not.
We do not.
So, do you have any other locations?
No.
This will be your primary location?
Uh-huh.
Yes, right.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Do you, if it was, I know that the staff had recommended about the improving the, to asphalt or concrete, as well as, the striping of the parking, visitor parking, and a limit on the open storage. Did you want to address any of those?
As far as that crushed gravel, are we, can we put crushed gravel down there, or will we be required to do the asphalt?
I think that's part of this, that's part of the conditions that would be for this, as far as whatever, what conditions are set. But I think the, staff recommended that, and I, would happen to agree with it about that it would need to be an improved, concrete or asphalt surface. As well as, the screening portion of it, that would be part of the conditions to be able to operate it as the used auto dealer.
And the screening part of it would need to be, where would it need to be located?
Well, there would be screening along the back portion where it's adjacent to the residential, where it's adjacent to the residence. I guess, would that just be to the east or to the?
So any residential property will need to be screened from your use. That's in the ordinance. And then any additional, if you have any open storage, that will also have to be screened from all public streets. So Burrell and Austin Avenue. So if you have additional open storage and it exceeds that 5% that's called out in the ordinance, and then possibly called out in this conditional use permit, that would need to be screened.
So we have been trying to improve our corridors into Denison. And we've been trying to not necessarily limit used car dealerships, but in the past, sometimes they're the ones that are not well kept and not attractive. So that's why in the ordinances, we've added things like landscaping to make them more attractive and fit in. So try to keep that in mind in the decisions you're making. Can you assure us that you would make efforts in those regards? So the paving would be one thing, but anything else that makes it more attractive is important too.
I know before on previous used auto dealers, I don't remember if it was on Armstrong or if it was along 91 maybe, that we did have, certain landscape requirements. I think they, either it was by some type of shrubs or box trees or something. I know that we, in the past had, added some conditions to the landscaping to help, at least beautify a little bit, or I guess, that route along there. And obviously this is a major thoroughfare through, into and out of downtown, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Obviously there's a lot of used car dealers there, but as they come up, I think we need to look at the landscaping portion of it and make sure that we can help that along the process, as much as we can.
Yeah, we was planning to put a 2-foot pipe rail around the outer edge of it, so we didn't want to put too much in front of it and cover up the view of our cars. But maybe we can put some shrubs or something around the front to
You
help
don't
it
want
a little
to,
bit.
you don't want to cover up the cars, but we don't necessarily want to see all the cars is the on the other end of it, I guess, so. But, all right. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No.
Okay, all right.
The paving conditions are acceptable to you?
Okay.
Yes.
No crushed rock, asphalt.
And that's acceptable to you, the asphalt or concrete paving?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
You would, I mean, I think that would be,
Thank you.
that could be part of it. All right. We'll ask if there's any follow-up questions, we'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else like to speak on this item? All right, then I'll close the public hearing portion of this item. Further comments, discussion among commission members?
It just seems like to approve it without landscaping or some beautification is a step backwards for us. And I understand not wanting to cover up the cars.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't, as far as how to quantify.
So maybe we could
To quantify
add that
as a,
as a condition.
as a condition, but I do agree that there should be some, some landscaping requirements,
Even
particularly along
the-
Armstrong.
Some of the shades that they put over the cars, there's a number of things that can be done that make it more attractive.
Yeah.
So I don't,
Yeah. I mean, those are typically more to protect them for hail and sun,
I
different things
understand.
like that. But I think, yeah, new cars and
Well,
different things, but I think more is just to kind of
Yeah.
help,
well, something like
camouflage it a little bit to,
trees wouldn't cover the,
no, but at least I guess it makes some sort of
softens it.
softens, correct? If you have some sort of, shrubs or trees, bushes, something like that. I don't, if we have any obviously part of it would be, setting some type of standard for it versus, yes, we want more landscaping. It's hard to,
Right.
it's hard to enforce, so that would be what type of landscaping, or at least some,
You could make a recommendation, if you so choose, to council to include that within the CUP so that they also can discuss that and identify what that percentage is. As you previously mentioned, this has been a topic that's come up before, so that's within your right as a commission to make that recommendation.
Okay, I do think that is that we would have, like it to include some landscaping requirements.
I wish I could pull up what we did before.
Well, I think there was some specific things as far as the entrance and things that were discussed on that one, but that was a couple of years ago, so.
Too long ago.
This specific request, as you know, is for the crushed gravel versus the asphalt. So we do need to make sure that we address that specifically, and then if you would like to add in that other condition for consideration of landscaping for council to discuss, then that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, my preference would be to include, all of the staff, the staff conditions as far as the improvement of the parking, the striping, the open storage, limitation, or screening, as well as landscaping requirements. Anything else? Any other comments? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit request for an auto dealer whose property at 1920 South Austin Avenue for the following conditions. Listed parking must be located in improved surface, either paved or asphalt or concrete. Employee and visitor parking shall be striped. Open storage may not exceed the 5% of the total lot area, and excess storage must be screened from all public streets. And then in addition, we would like to add a conditional use for landscaping requirements for council to discuss further.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Thank you for that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. All right, that concludes the public hearing portion. We'll move to any staff updates today.
I don't have any. Mary, do you have any? Nope, no staff updates.
Okay, all right. Then, do we have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion.
And a second.
And a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.